So what does Chuck E. Cheese have to do with the Ascension? This is part 2 of my discussion of what does it feel like? What does the Ascension feel like? You can go back and watch my first video, but you don't have to. Ascension is this idea that we are evolving, that we are moving to a higher vibration, not just individually, but as a planet. This is also called the shift in consciousness, the global shift in consciousness. A lot of intuitives have been talking about this for some time. And for those of us who are, brujas, witches, hoodoos, mystics, dreaming women, 4 a.m. club members, the whole question of ascension is a really important one. But it's really important for all of us, this idea that we're going to move to a better place, a higher vibration, a better world. And I think it's a really important question given what we're going through right now, because it doesn't look like that's happening. In fact, it could be argued that the absolute opposite appears to be happening. We're regressing into lower and lower vibrations of hate, division, and conflict, especially in light of the Chuck E. Cheese incident. So while it's true that a session feels like raising our vibration, it feels like feeling more connected, it feels like being more in touch with our higher self, with our intuition, having more dreams, having a larger sense of the big picture, Ascension also means shadows coming to the surface, because the ascension requires a cleanse, right? It requires us to purge and let go of those things that are not consistent with the higher vibration that we want to embody. And so we can think of it as like a healing crisis. Like when you're sick and you get some medicine, sometimes what will happen is your body will go through a healing crisis where you'll appear to get worse before you get better. And that's because your body is trying to release the toxins or the virus or whatever the illness is. And so you might suddenly have a spiked fever. You might break out in a rash. We see this with skin things, right? A pimple is like the toxins coming out. Your body's trying to push out the stuff it doesn't want. A rash is the same way. Your body is trying to push out the things that it's not good for the body. And of course, this is my metaphor because I'm a medical intuitive. And so what does that look like for us as a country? What does that look like for us as individuals as we are trying to raise our vibration? What does it look like for us to go through a healing crisis, to go through a purge, to go through a cleanse? It looks like what we're going through right now, where you have this huge rise in hate, right? You have this huge rise in certain belief systems like white supremacy and patriarchy, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia. None of these are consistent with a rise in vibration, right? Those are all low vibration attitudes, beliefs, and feelings. You might think of it as a last gasp type of behavior, right? When the patriarchy is being defeated by the rise of the divine feminine, the patriarchy gets more violent. And here's the thing, we're not going to just see this rise in kind of low vibration attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors among people who are low vibration, because it's actually us, those of us who are spiritual people, who are healers, who are intuitives, we're the ones that are also going to have to contend with this kind of struggle and cleansing and kind of purging that's going on so that we can raise our vibration. And so what does this look like? What does it look like for us as intuitives? What does this purge look like? What is this trying to ascend but having shadows kind of show up? It looks like all of our old garbage rising to the surface, kind of the flotsam just kind of coming out and revealing ourselves. The dirty laundry of our emotional landscape is starting to show itself. And some people might see this as being easily triggered by things that are not yet healed. But there's one way in which this is showing up that relates to the Chuck E. Cheese situation that we're dealing with. And that's really what I want to talk about is how do we deal with this movement? How do I talk about this? I have to be so careful with my words because, we don't have any free speech anymore. I mean, I haven't for months on this platform, but apparently it's getting worse. I don't know. I mean, I know that for some people, they haven't really encountered it. And for others, it's been something we've been dealing with for a long time. But anyway, I'm trying to negotiate that. So bear with me. What we are seeing right now throughout the realm is people offering all of this kind of praise and love and compassion and empathy and both sidism and all of these, positive words for a hate monger and his family. And I see this as a sign of this shadow that hasn't been healed yet, right? Like, you're a spiritual person, you're all about ascension, you're trying to make the world a better place, but you grew up in this realm, right? And this realm of stars and stripes, we were all raised to be YT supremacists. We were all raised to think that one gender was better than another. We were all raised that way. It's in the water, right, that we swim in. It's in the air that we breathe. And so if you haven't done the work to explicitly unlearn those Ray beliefs, you hold them still somewhere in your subconscious. And so when all of a sudden the media starts presenting somebody who's been an incredible instigator of division and hate and conflict, presenting them as some kind of all-American hero, there's a way in which that triggers for a lot of people, especially people who are palm colored, this kind of knee-jerk belief in kind of whitey innocence. And, oh, they're innocent, or something must have happened to them. Maybe they got groomed. Maybe they got corrupted. I'm sure they were really decent people. And, oh, nobody should be upset with these people because what a tragedy. And the thing about YT supremacy is we never extend that type of sympathy to people who are not palm colored. We don't assume their innocence, even when they are innocent, right? George Floyd, right? We don't assume their innocence, and we don't mourn for them. But the extent to which people who prior to this might have seemed anti-racist, the extent to which even those people are jumping up and saying, oh, well, they're innocent, or, we got to have compassion for the widow, and we got to have compassion for, this hate monger, because, nobody deserves blah, blah, blah. And this is that purge, right? That has to happen. We cannot move forward into this higher vibration if we're still holding on to these type of beliefs that certain people, just by virtue of how they look, are innocent. And no matter what they do or say, they're deserving of our compassion because of the color of the package. And somehow our critical thinking skills go out the window. We're unable to see a Chuck E. Cheese widow calling for a war, actually advocating for violence. We're unable to see that even. We can't even so all of a sudden our filter is gone and we can't even recognize that somebody is trying to start a sea war. And instead we have to say, oh, poor thing. We just have conveniently forgotten that this person who was dispatched argued that Black people should be enslaved, that they were better off as slaves. This is what he said. We've suddenly forgotten that this person said that if his 10-year-old child was SA'd, he would require her to give birth to the child of the rapist. We're supposed to forget all of the hate mongering and all of the suffering that people in marginalized groups have experienced as a direct result of calls to action and beliefs perpetrated by this organization, and suddenly have compassion. This kind of, cognitive dissonance is only possible when you have unprocessed YT supremacy that you just haven't addressed. And so as we ascend, as we move to this higher vibration, we got to purge ourselves of all of these belief systems, right? We've got to let go of these ideas. And this is why the files are so important too, because this is bringing to the surface our whole culture of essay and PDF-ery. It's a big part of our culture that has to come to the surface and be purged from our society. This is why we have the head clown running things. He's a mirror. He's a representative of everything that is awful and ugly about our history. He's like the giant pimple of our realm. And if we want to ascend, we have to acknowledge this purge. And we have to be willing to let go.